Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to go over the topic, the guidelines, assignments, and sources for paper number 3. Hopefully by now, you'll understand how each of the papers is set up, especially on Cobra during our online class. So here we have our link to our guidelines page. These are all the things that you're required to do in that paper, and then there's a list of all the assignments and their due dates. And then again, we have these two subfolders. The first one is pre-writing assignments, where you look at the sources I give you and there's some assignments to do with them. And then this is the information in the assignments for writing the actual paper in the writing the paper folder. So for this paper, we're calling it food because you are going to write about how you and Americans value food in this country, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because we all know the good stuff we're supposed to eat, but we don't always eat it. And that's true for all of us, and especially as college students, um, you might have some insecurities with food right now, especially if you are trying to go through school, through having a job on the side, if you have family. Student hunger is a real thing. And right now, especially, we're living during a pandemic. And so things may have gotten harder as well. So we're going to take a closer look at how people value food, the choices that they make, where they get their food, things like that. And I find that this is a very personal paper for students. This is something where you can bring in your own experiences with your family, with your culture, anything like that is definitely welcome in this paper. And especially if you're an international student, I always find it interesting to see what you all have to say about what you think Americans value food and what you've seen as well. I had one student from China who talked about the difference between eating a donut there versus coming to America and eating a donut here. So let's take a look first at the pre-writing assignments before we get into the actual guidelines of the paper. So for this paper, you're going to be required to include a minimum of 5 sources, okay? And those 5 sources can be found here. The first source that we are going to look at and you're going to include in your paper is several chapters from a book by Jim Gaffigan. He is a comedian, hopefully well known to you guys, and he talks a lot about food. And so these chapters are from a book called Food, a Love Story. You're looking at pages 9 through 26. And these just talk about his own dealings with food, what he has seen with other Americans and their issues with food, things like that. So this is a source that you will need to include in your paper. The link after this one are questions that you need to answer those regarding those chapters, okay? And this assignment is due in the Dropbox before 11:59 on Sunday, November 8th. If you would like, I have 2 links here to 2 of his more common stand-up comedies. Jim Gaffigan is well known for his Hot Pocket sketch. And then he has a video about McDonald's, which is really interesting because we look at McDonald's and we judge it so much. But he talks about how we all kind of have our own McDonald's in our own life, even if it's not that we're going there. So those are a couple of videos that you can look at as well. The next source here I have is a video called How Cooking Can Change Your Life by Michael Pollan. And he's written several books. His latest is called Cooked. And normally when we meet as a class on campus, I actually, instead of watching that video, we end up watching a video from Netflix. Now, what Netflix did is they contacted him and they turned his book Cooked into a series on Netflix. And there's 4 different episodes that they did, because in his book he looked at cooking through the different elements. So he looked at cooking through fire, through water, through air, and then earth. And so the one episode that I always have students watch when we're in class is the one on water, because in fire all it is a fire and you put meat on it and that's how you make food. But then once we were able to create ceramic pots, that became different cooking. Okay, and so that's what we talk about with water. And this is a really interesting episode where they talk about who does the cooking, they talk about time, they talk about how food industries, food companies tried to take over the kitchen And so it's really a good episode. So if you have Netflix and if you want to, go ahead and watch this episode. And if you want to use any of the other episodes, feel free to do that. Definitely contact me if you're going to plan on using any of the Netflix episodes. And I will get you the information on how to create that citation. But if you don't have Netflix, definitely this video goes over the same information. This is him giving a speech about his book shortly after it was released. Also on Netflix, if you have it and you're interested, there is another show that Netflix did called Ugly Delicious. And this one really was kind of interesting. One of the episodes I recommend on it is number 6 called Fried Chicken, and it shows the connection of enslaved people who were here over 100 years ago and how it connects to fried chicken and how that all came about in today's world. So it's really interesting to see how things, played out over time and how a lot of us probably don't realize that. So if that's something you're interested in, you have Netflix, you think you might want to include that in your paper, go for it. But just let me know if you're going to do that, and I will send you the information on how to write the citation. The next source, now that video for Michael Pollan did not have an assignment to it. The only assignment for it was to watch it. This next assignment is a two-parter assignment, so here's part 1 and part 2. So the first part is just kind of you getting in touch with your own experiences, things like that. It's asking specific questions of you, so just kind of jot down your own things, observations. And then homework number 2 is one of the sources that you will have to include in your paper as well. In 2005, a book came out called The Hungry Planet, and in it they had photographs of 27 families from various countries from around the world. And so they said, go out, spend your money, get a week's worth of groceries, and we are going to take pictures of you surrounded by your groceries. And these pictures are really interesting because depending on where you are, it depends on what kind of food you have available. And so in this homework assignment, I'm asking you to write down 5 things that you notice from the from the photos. Now, there's 2 links here. Depending on your computer and which article works best for you, that's why I chose these 2. Because some computers would allow me to look at the Time one where the Daily Mail was difficult, and vice versa. Okay, so they're there for you. They're the same photos. The Time article has everything in dollar cents. The Daily Mail has it in pounds, if it makes any difference. So this assignment then is due in the Dropbox before 11:59 on Sunday, November 8th. Our next one, so remember in Born a Crime, Trevor Noah had mentioned about how McDonald's was his thing. When he started making money and everything, he's like, no, Mom, I'm not going to stay home. I'm going to go to McDonald's. That was the big thing. But he had made a brief point about KFC, how KFC was huge in South Africa. And so this is an article that came out a couple years ago, and it's called Obesity Was Rising as Ghana Embraced Fast Food, Then Came KFC. So Ghana was a country that, back in the 80s was in poverty. People were dying because they couldn't get enough to eat. And now because of fast food, especially KFC chains that have come into the country, people are dying on the streets simply because they're eating a lot of the fatty foods and the wrong kinds of food as well. And so this is a really interesting article from the New York Times about that. And so here are questions to answer as you read through the article. This assignment is due in the Dropbox before 11:59 on Sunday, November 8th. And this will be one of the sources that you will have to include in your paper. And then the last link that you'll have there is a short little folder called College Student Poverty. Because the reality is that for college students, you have a lot of work to do. And a lot of you might have food insecurities. You might have to jump from different home to home. Your basic needs might not always be met. And so here we have 2 sources. This first one is an article from NPR, And this was from 2018, and it talks about hunger and homelessness, how widespread it is in college students. And then the second one is homeless college students out in the cold. It is a news video that deals directly with a couple of different stories from college students. All right, so those are the sources that you will need to use. You'll need to use Jim Gaffigan, the Mike Pollan video. Now, if you have Netflix and you choose to use the water episode from Netflix, you can do that in place of this one, in place of this source here. Okay, that's up to you. Then don't forget the photos of the families, the Ghana article, and then at least one of the college student poverty links. Okay, so either the article or the video. Now, that's just the minimum you're required. If you want to use both, you're more than welcome to. All right, and then so writing the paper, same thing. We have our pre-writing assignments, and then you're going to go and write your outline and create your works cited page, a rough draft, and then a final draft. Okay, so that's basically explaining a little bit about the sources and things like that. I'm going to end this video and pick it up with a second video that goes over the guidelines page.